I said that so long as I held this office, never again would Native Americans be forgotten or ignored.
Lofty promises yet again from U.S. President Barack Obama to a people who have historically been overlooked and abused by the U.S. government. Last year, President Obama pledged a new chapter for Native Americans, signing the Tribal Law and Order Act and mandating 90 days for government agencies to implement serious reforms toward Indian country. But 1 year later, little has changed on the Mattaponi Indian Reservation in Virginia. Like the majority of America's indigenous population, the Mattaponi have been tucked away to the confines of an Indian reservation. In the shadows of their ceremonial ground, the Mattaponi people have lived on this land for centuries. And what was once theirs, meaning 350,000 acres of land, has now been reduced to just over 100 acres. And the people here do what they can, the best they can, to sustain themselves, their lands, and their cultural identity. Native Americans rank the highest in unemployment and poverty rates, infant mortality, and life expectancy rates. Indian reservations in the Midwest are plagued by alcoholism, domestic violence, and teen suicide, contributing to an epidemic of hopelessness within America's indigenous population, and a disillusionment with both the federal and tribal leadership. It's where ordinary people like Sharon Eagleson, founder of the NGO Spirit Rising, step in. Helping indigenous people with their homes, food, and setting up their businesses.
We do it grassroots. We do it more with humanity.
At times, the prejudice towards natives is reflected in what's donated to them.
Sometimes we've been given old meat, yet people gave us new Bibles along with the old meat.
Like many natives on the reservation, Robert Gockenbacher, a U.S. veteran, has been receiving help from Spirit Rising. His roof has caved in, and he hasn't had running water for over a year. Asked whether he receives help from the federal or tribal government,
No, it's pretty much you're on your own here.
Off camera, Robert was much more political. The last time American Indians were radicalized through their political activism, over 60 natives were mysteriously murdered. Leonard Peltier was sentenced to 2 life terms in prison for a crime many insist he did not commit.
We want Obama to know that we're not going away.
These people are rallying for his freedom outside the tribal conference. This native man talks about life on the reservation.
The reservations, they're essentially prison camps. That's how they started, and that's how they remain, to keep people secluded away from the mainstream. We're forgotten, out of sight, out of mind.
So we're making progress. We're moving forward. And what I hope is that we are seeing a turning point in the relationship between our nations.
A relationship shattered by broken treaties and empty promises for the country's first people. Jahan Hafiz, RT, the Mattaponi Indian Reservation, Virginia.
As the champagne flows at another company listing, it's hard to recall sometimes this is a place still recovering from the global economic crisis. Hong Kong's stock market, like the city itself, is on the rise. And it's not just those in finance enjoying the thrill. Related professionals, from accountants to lawyers, are benefiting too.
It's obviously growing. I think because of its nexus with China, it's obviously in a good position.
Executive recruiters have never seen it so good, pulling in more talent from overseas and shifting people around in Asia between companies willing to pay more.
I've been in the industry 20 years and the last 18 in Asia, and it's the busiest I've seen the market. So it's in stark contrast to Europe and to the US.
Another industry, but the same story of growth, with big construction projects across Asia. Nearly a year into her new job with engineering firm AECOM, Lindsay Cheng decided to move to Asia, a very different work environment from her native UK.
If looking for a sort of a stable career, engineering is definitely the way to go at the moment for Asia, because everything's happening now in China, there's India, there's Southeast Asia, and Hong Kong. There's so much going on.
Friday evening around Hong Kong's bars and restaurants, the ethnically diverse mix reflects the changing realities of the job market here. In the new world of work, it seems, the future belongs to the truly globalized worker.
It's very hard to not, turn on the news and see what's happening back home. And if something is happening, breaking news or economic, you're always like, oh, thank God I'm here. There's always a part of you that is still there. But I don't think at the moment I would like to go back, because everything is just growing so fast, so exciting.
As the world's economic center of gravity shifts, Hong Kong finds itself pretty close to the actual center.
For example, General Motors today has its international headquarters in Shanghai. But definitely there's a greater importance of Asia Pacific on the whole, and it's not just Asia, it's also Middle East and Africa.
Newcomers in search of work here used to be known by the unfortunate acronym of FILTH. Failed in London, try Hong Kong. Now people arriving tend to be leaving behind places which themselves have failed. Rob McBride, Al Jazeera, Hong Kong.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Monday, December 20th, 2010, and I'm Darko. Welcome everyone to this economic news bulletin. New listeners, please visit my website, www.ggnonline.com. That's ggnonline.com. I just posted a new poll about your thoughts or your feelings towards 2012. You can check that out, along with these videos I'll be posting today. You just check that one video out, and it's all, basically you're a global citizen, and you're a global worker, global consumer. So no real point in fighting that. Just go with the flow, I guess, right? I guess I'll just pick up and leave the Midwest where I was born and raised, and say, oh well, screw the U.S. and I'm going to go to China. So. But no, I'm not going to do that. Gold draws safe haven flows up for a second day. Gold rose on Monday, even as the euro weakened, as investors sought a safe haven when the European Central Bank issued a warning about the region's finances, and Moody's said it may cut debt ratings for some Spanish banks. And moving on here, it says for oil up at January expiry on strong gasoline cold weather. It says oil prices rose a second straight session on Monday, lifted by strong gasoline futures ahead of expected holiday demand and also by cold weather, which supported heating oil futures. For Wall Street and stocks, Wall Street edges higher on energy and financial shares. U.S. stocks tacked on further gains to push the S&P 500 to a two-year high on Monday, continuing a steady upward march investors believe will continue into 2011. And some more good news, I guess. U.S. jobless claims fall to a new low. It says here jobless claims in the U.S. fell last week to almost the lowest level of the year, while construction of new homes rose. Figures by the Labor Department have shown. And it all goes on here. It says official data on new claims for unemployment released Thursday raised hopes for recovery in the battered United States job market. About 420,000 initial jobless claims were filed in the week ending of December 11th. And again, jobless rates declined in Illinois and Indiana. Unemployment rates dipped in Indiana and Illinois in November, according to data released Friday by the state and federal labor markets. So, said in preliminary data adjusted for seasonal changes in unemployment, Indiana's jobless rate was 9.8% in November, which is down 0.1% from a month earlier. The unemployment rate in Indiana matched the national average last month. So. Inflation rate hits 6-month high in Britain. It says Britain's inflation rate has risen to a 6-month high of 3.3% as a spike in food and clothing prices caused the cost of living to soar further again, new figures show. It says the coalition government missed its official target for the 11th month in a row, with the consumer price index rising unexpectedly to 3.3% in November, up from 3.2% in October. So it said the figure is the CPI's highest level for 6 months and shows that prices are still increasing well above the government's target of 2%, said the reports. So, payrolls drop in 28 U.S. states. Joblessness raises in 21 in labor setback. So it says payrolls decreased in 28 U.S. states and the unemployment rate climbed in 21, showing most parts of the world's largest economy took part in November labor market setbacks. It says here North Carolina led the nation with 12,500 job cuts last month, followed by Massachusetts with 8,600 dismissals, and Ohio with 7,800. Figures from the Labor Department showed today in Washington, joblessness increased most in Georgia and Idaho, while workers in Nevada faced the highest rate in the country at 14.3%. So it says here, the report is consistent with figures on December 3rd that showed unemployment increased last month for the first time since August. The Federal Reserve pledged to buy an additional $600 billion of treasuries by June, and the $858 billion bill passed by Congress extending all Bush-era tax cuts for 2 years may help boost growth and cut employment. And we're going to keep moving here, and I'm going to cut this video into 2 parts, so finish up here. In the last 5 minutes, it says reality track, November home foreclosures dropped 21%. U.S. foreclosure activity drops to lowest levels since November of 2008. Judicial default notices dropped more than 30%. REOs down 28%. So it said foreclosure filings, default notices, scheduled auctions, and bank repossessions reported on 262,339 U.S. residential properties in November, a 21% decrease from the previous month and a 14% decrease from November 2009, according to a report released on Thursday, December 17th by Realty Track. 1 in every 492 U.S. housing units received a foreclosure filing during this month. Next up is for BBC. Bangladesh investors riot over stock market fall. Hundreds of angry investors have staged protests in the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka, after the stock exchange saw its steepest ever fall in a day. It says reports said that they threw bricks at police, marched in the streets, shouting slogans, and staged a sit-down protest. So the index ended the day down by 552 points, or 6.72%. 6 more banks out of business in the U.S. Regulators in the U.S. have closed 6 more banks in 4 different states, raising the bank failure toll this year to 157. The FDIC shut down the 6 banks with a total of $1.23 billion in assets, Bloomberg reported on Saturday. The United America's Bank, Appalachian Community Bank, and the Chestatee State Bank in Georgia, the First Southern Bank in Arkansas, Community National Bank in Minnesota, and Florida's Bank of Miami have been seized in the latest closures. Florida has been hit the hardest by bank failures, among other states losing 29 lenders this year. 20% plus British youth unemployed. Britain is heading for another decade of youth unemployment, with a related rate rising to over 20% to be unemployed, according to the ONS. 10% of British boys leave school illiterate. Every 1 in 11 British boys start their preliminary school with the reading skills of, at best, an average 7-year-old, studies find. 3 million homeowners could struggle to pay the mortgage. An estimated 3 million homeowners could struggle to pay their mortgage if interest rates rise, in line with predictions from the Confederation of British Industry. The CBI predicted that higher than expected inflation would force the Bank of England to raise rates as early as the spring, and the rates could rise by 2.25 percentage points to almost 6 times the current rate within 2 years. Snow could force retailers to issue profit warnings. Shares in some of the UK's biggest retailers fell sharply on Monday amid fears that the Arctic weather sweeping the UK has dented sales in the most important trading week of the year. So next up, California greenlights cap and trade emission rules. So, as snow falls and it's wreaking havoc on the airports, and basically the biggest shopping week of the year is being affected by this, by the snow and by the cold. California goes along with the cap and trade. And here we go. It says California's regulators Thursday voted in favor of the first cap and trade rules in the United States to tame greenhouse gas emissions. And look at what we have next. Napolitano says DHS to begin battling climate change as Homeland Security issue. At an all-day White House conference, Environmental Justice Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano announced that her department is creating a new task force to battle the effects of climate change on domestic security operations. Arnold Schwarzenegger indicates he would accept position in Obama administration. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the outgoing Republican governor of California, has indicated he would accept a position as, quote, an energy czar in President Barack Obama's Democratic administration. I want to be the energy czar. PIMCO, the world's largest bond fund, has called on Greece, Ireland, and Portugal to step outside the Eurozone temporarily and restructure their debts unless the currency bloc agrees to a radical change of course, says they will lead to a breakup. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.